Hey, welcome to another episode of the Courtney Sanders Show. Today is a super special episode, number one, because we're in 2020. This is the first episode of the new year. Oh my goodness, the first episode of the new decade. You guys know how excited I am about New Year's, how it's my favorite holiday ever. But this is also super special because this audio is actually pulled from a masterclass that I'm doing right now. So I decided to do this episode, so this, ultimate guide to achieving your goals, because I wanted to differentiate the difference between goals, projects, habits, and routines. And I decided to do this based on my own experience. So I was sitting down at my laptop, getting ready to type out, one of my goals. And because I've been doing this for years, y'all know I'm a self-improvement junkie. I teach this. I'm obsessed with productivity and project management and goal achievement and all these different things. I realized as I was typing it out that the things that I wanted to achieve in 2020, I was automatically segmenting it based on, well, this is a goal, this is a project, this is a habit that I want to develop. And I realized that other people might not know that. And so I started thinking about that, and I was like, well, this is really important because this is part of the reason I feel why, and there are lots of reasons why people don't achieve, their goals in the new year or their resolutions. But a major reason is that people don't know the difference between a goal and a project and a habit or a routine, and people don't know the difference between their vision and their goals. And so I was just going to do this as like an audio podcast where I just, tell you guys, and if you're listening to this, then that's what this is for you. But know that I'm also screen sharing as I explain this. I'm screen sharing this so that if you want a visual to see what I'm talking about, you can do that. And so if you're like, what? Where is this video? Where is this visual? Go ahead and go to CourtneyLSanders.com/2020. So that's just Courtney, my name, CourtneyL Sanders, SANDERS.com/2, 0, CourtneyLSanders.com/2020. And you can get access to the video version of what you're listening to right now if you want to see what I'm doing. And I'm actually using, I guess you can call it a project management tool, but I call it a life management tool. If you follow me on social media, I've been raving about it. People are like, are these people sponsoring you? I'm like, no, they are not sponsoring me. I am not getting paid. It's just an amazing app that I discovered watching a YouTube video. Actually, I was watching someone else's YouTube video about how they manage their content creation process, and I noticed they were using like this tool in the video, and I was like, what the heck is that? And so I started doing some searching, and then I found this tool, and it's really helping me manage not just my goals but everything. My projects, my business deals, remembering to do stuff for my husband, like make his doctor's appointments, like the personal things, the professional things. I really love this tool because this is the only tool that I've discovered thus far that allows me to basically dump my whole brain and my whole life in it and manage everything in one space. So I don't have to use this tool for my business and this tool for my personal life. So anyway, so if you're watching the video, then what you're looking at on the screen is the tool that I'm discussing. But for the podcast purposes, that's neither here nor there. I want to jump into the 5 components that you have to organize your dreams in, right? So I think we use goal as a catch-all term for anything we want to achieve, right? So if you want to start waking up at 5:30 in the morning, you say, oh, I have a goal of waking up at 5:30 in the morning. If you say you want to register your LLC, you say, oh, I have a goal of registering my LLC. Not recognizing that technically, even though those are 2 things that you want to achieve, those 2 endeavors are categorized different. And it's important to recognize the different categories, because once you know the different categories, it helps you in your mind understand what task you need to do, and just overall it helps you better achieve your goals. So, if you're watching the video version, this will make sense. Well, it's going to make sense either way as you're listening. I don't want you to, click out like, what? I need to watch the video. You don't have to. I'm going to explain it. But I think the video will be helpful to you. All right. So for any endeavor, for any dream, for anything that you want to undertake, you have to look at it in your mind and categorize it as one of 5 categories. And those categories are a value, vision, a goal, a project, or a habit. And I'm going to use habit and routines interchangeably. For me, a habit is something that you do daily or on a consistent basis, and a routine is kind of the same thing. I guess the routine is more of is your system of habits. So I might use habit and routine interchangeably, but essentially those are the 5 categories. So your values, your visions, your goals, your projects, and your habits or your routines, right? And so it's important to understand these 5 different categories because everything flows from them. So your value or your values come first because your vision, your goals, and your projects and your habits will be derived from that. And that's really important to start with in order to determine what goals you even want to accomplish. And I say this all the time. Oftentimes people set New Year's resolutions because it sounds good. Everybody's setting a resolution to read more books and save more money and lose more weight and start a business and do all this. But if those goals don't map to your vision for your life, and if your vision for your life doesn't map to your ultimate value, then you're going to have a hard time sticking with it. In fact, I would even say people who say, oh, I can never get motivated, I don't have any motivation, how do you stay so motivated? If that's a question for you, you find yourself really demotivated, barring you don't have depression or your diet's not messed up. Shout out to my latest Instagram post where I was talking about diets, and how that can really affect your energy levels. But barring some major life event or something going on with you physically, if you consistently struggle with staying motivated for your goals, it's probably because it's not connected to something that you honestly value. And so if that goal is important to you, you're going to have to change your values. And that's very difficult to do because people value what they value. Like, values are deep, values are based on, your culture, your beliefs, how you were raised, your personality. I even think values are like a spiritual thing. I think, we come into this world with different things that we value. And also with values, it's not one is better than the other. Different people just value different things, and that's good. We want that because when you value different things, then that means we have diversity of people going after different goals, right? So everybody can't value, let's say, independence per se, right? So maybe people who tend to be entrepreneurial, one of their highest values is like freedom and independence, right? That's a great thing. But if everybody valued freedom and independence, then everybody would be going after the same type of goals and have the same type of vision for their life. And we wouldn't have, a diversity of people, like who would be the employees, who would be the supporters, Not everybody is meant to go after those things. And, in part, whether you're meant for something and based on whether it fits your intrinsic value. Some people are very, they just value their family. They don't care about leaving a mark on the world per se. Not that that's a bad thing or anything. They just value really pouring into their family unit. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need people like that because, they pour into their family. They might have a child who then, values leaving a mark on the world. And so because they poured into that child had everything that she needed or he needed in order to go out into the world and, achieve great things according to their values of leaving a legacy, So everybody's values, if everybody, as long as your value is, positive, obviously if you value hurting people or you value selfishness, those are not good things. So as long as your values are good and positive and ethical, it's fine, if you have different values, but you have to be honest about what your values are because everything in your life is going to flow from that. And if you try to go after goals that other people have that are not based on your values, you're going to find it very difficult to, or even if you create a vision for your life that is not based on your values, you're going to find it very difficult to stick with it. So again, I was, during this whole process. So, and your value really doesn't change barring a life event. Sometimes there are people, I've heard stories of people who, horribly tragic stories of people who maybe didn't value their families or whatever, and then something happened, or, you know, car accident, or they lost someone or something, and then suddenly their values change. So that does happen, but it usually only happens because of like a major life event. It could be, you know, positive too. Typically when you have a child, right, your values shift a little bit. So it doesn't always have to be bad, like, you know, you lost somebody in a car accident, but typically your values are your values for life, and they usually only shift and change when major life events happen. And it could be major positive life events like getting married or having a kid, or you know, graduating from college or whatever, or it could be, you know, a very negative event like, you know, almost overdosing on drugs, or, you know, losing a loved one, or losing your house, or something like that. And you can have more than one thing that you value, but I find that for most people, they have a handful of things that they really value. It's usually, I've never really seen people who like have strong values more than like 3, 4, maybe 5, but you know, it's not something where, oh, I have 10 values. Like typically it's like one that's dominant, and you might have like 2 other ones that are really important to you. So as I was setting my goals, I said, well, you know, what is my value? So I'm one of those, you know, independent, freedom seeking people. So I would definitely say like creative expression is part of my values, but really that goes with like freedom and all that. But I think my biggest value, honestly, is probably leaving a legacy and just wanting to make an impact and to make a mark on the world. Like, you know, I want my life to count for something. And again, you know, that's my value. I know not everybody feels that way. Some people are like, especially like older generations, they weren't into that. Like I think about, the silent generation and some boomers, they were very like, you know, how can I just get their value is their kids, you know, having it better than they did. I think about immigrants coming to this country, you know, even African Americans overcoming like slavery and Jim Crow, like, and this is what I'm saying, you know, your values are hard to change, and they're deep because they're rooted in culture, experience, your generation. Like they're rooted in like so many like things that are bigger than you. So values tend to be very common even amongst like certain generations. So I think about even like older generations who they didn't value leaving a mark on the world as much as they valued like that, just pouring into their kids so that their kids could have it better than they did. So I see my value of desiring to leave a legacy and make a mark on the world. I see that as the fruit of my ancestors who came before me. Like I'm allowed to have this value. Like this is something I can even value for myself because of the contributions and the sacrifices that they made. Many of them, you know, we don't even know their names, and they just, you know, live silent lives, and history will never know who they are. But I'm here talking to you right now because of, you know, the sacrifices that they made. So I'm proud to have the value of wanting to leave a legacy and make the mark on the world, because I know so many people died for me to even be able to desire this. So at least, so on the screen here, it says ultimate value. By that, I don't mean it's my ultimate value, like the only thing I value, but I mean, it's one of my highest values, and definitely for 2020, and I would say even this decade, because of where I am in life. You know, I'm in my 30s. I feel like your 20s was figuring things out and getting a lot of good tools and kind of getting the raw materials together. And your 30s are about really being intentional about putting those raw materials that you gathered in your 20s, putting them together and making something out of them. So I feel like in my 30s, I'm really in the beginning of that building season. You know, I'm building a family. I'm, you know, having my son and, you know, just building things with my husband. Like I'm in that building spirit right now. So at least for 2020 and for this decade, my ultimate value is to leave a legacy and make a mark on the world. So now that I've established what my value is, then it's time to say, okay, what is the vision that I have for my life based on my values? And so we move into the second category, which is your vision. And so I hope you start to see the power of this, because people wake up and they say, oh, for 2020, my goal is to leave a legacy and make a mark on the world. That's not really a goal. That's a value. You see what I'm saying? So this is why these categories and these segments are really important. All right, so we move into vision, right? So my vision for my life, one, ultimately, is to fulfill God's purpose for my life. Because why? Because my ultimate value is to leave a legacy and to make a mark on the world. And so I know that I was created for a specific purpose. I know everything in my life, all of my experiences, like all of these, I've been allowed to go through things, good and bad, because it's uniquely crafted for the purpose that I'm supposed to accomplish in my generation. And that's just something I've been really thinking about. And this is like a side note, I'm going to have to look this up on my phone. But I was even journaling about this the other day. I was reading, I forget the scripture. I was reading, I know I was in Acts because that's what I'm studying right now in the Bible. But I think it was Acts 13. Was it? Dang it, I didn't put the... Oh, yes, okay. It was Acts 13:36. And Paul was like somewhere, y'all know. Well, maybe you don't know. In the Bible, Paul was a famous apostle and missionary, and he traveled the world, spreading the gospel. And so he went to an area where they weren't familiar with Jewish customs and people that are of importance and significance to the Jews. And David, who's prominently featured in the Bible, he was one of the kings of the Jews. And Paul was talking about how there's a particular verse that people thought was in reference to David, but he's making the argument that it's not in reference to David, it's actually in reference to Jesus. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I just noted this verse because he was saying, this particular verse is not a reference to David, for after David had done the will of God in his own generation, he died and was buried with his ancestors. So Paul is talking about like, this verse is not about David, it's about Jesus, because after David had done the will of God in his generation, David died. And this verse is talking about, coming to life. And, so this verse is talking about Jesus. But I was like, that's really interesting that he said, after David had done the will of God in his own generation. And so I firmly believe that not only, are we beautifully and wonderfully made and are you created for a purpose, but I believe that we're here, like you are here in the 2000s at the beginning. We got to see the clocks tick over from 1999 to 2000. Like we are in the new millennium. Our generation, we're here for a specific purpose, but we don't have, so much time. At best, we get 100 years or so on this earth, probably less than that, maybe 90 or whatever. And so I think about the whole of human experience as like a relay race. And, like in track, y'all know I used to run track in high school and I love my track analogies, but it's like a relay race, like the 4x4, where you got four runners, one starts off, but once they finish their leg, they're passing that baton on. And so I know I'm third years in my race right now, and pretty soon Lord willing, not pretty soon, right? I hope I have more time. But one day I'm going to have to pass that baton on to my son, and he's going to have to run the race in his leg, and then he's going to pass the baton on to his son or daughter. And so this is what it means to be in our own generation. And so for me, the first vision that I have for my life is fulfilling God's purpose for my life, because I know part of that purpose is tied to the fact that I am here alive in 2020. I am a millennial. I have access to social media, like all the unique, quirky things about our generation. Like I know those things aren't here on accident. I know I'm here to use them and to utilize them. So I can't leave a legacy and a mark on the world unless I ultimately fulfill what God has placed me here to do, because I'm placed here very specifically for a very specific reason. So sorry to get long-winded on that, but y'all know I get super passionate. Okay, and this is kind of not in any order, but sort of a little bit. The vision for my life is I want to fulfill God's purpose for my life. I want to have a passionate and wonderful marriage. Now, not only do I want my marriage to be fun and, lovey-dovey and romantic and all that, and even as I'm recording this, I'm actually recording this New Year's Eve, and, my husband's taking off work early. The baby's in daycare. We're going to go have a date day. I was going to say a date night. We're going to go have a date day and go eat some fancy lunch, downtown Houston somewhere. So, we want to do all those things and be in love and all that stuff. But Oh yeah, we want to be in love, but no. But it relates to feeling God's purpose for my life and leaving a legacy on the world, because I know my husband is my unique partner, like with me to run this race as well. And so our marriage needs to be strong, because I know I can't do it. Like I'm not supposed to be doing it on my own. That's why he's placed in my life, and he's not supposed to be doing it on his own. That's why he's placed in my life. Like we're one. Like we're both in each other's life to help each other ultimately run the race that we're supposed to be running. And so, my marriage is very important because it's tied to that. And notice, my marriage comes first on this list above, business and all that, because for years I had it twisted where I felt like if I could just make my business super successful and I could just make a lot of money, then the success and the money would allow me to fulfill God's purpose for my life. But it's actually the other way around. And it's not to go off on a tangent. Not everybody, is married, which is fine. Not everybody's called to be married. Some, things happen. So I'm not saying, that your vision has to look like this. Again, these are my goals and values and vision. This is my vision for my life. I am married. I am called to be married. I know my husband was, he's supposed to be my husband, and I'm supposed to be his wife. We know that. You can listen back in some of my old episodes and I talk about how we met and what our story is like. But yeah, I'm supposed to be with that. I almost said something. I'm supposed to be with that lovely man. So after have a passionate, wonderful marriage, I want to raise well-educated, well-adjusted kids as a mom. And again, this, I didn't start to really realize this until I had kids, but your family does come first. And even as a father, your family comes first, because, this child was sent to you. You could have had any baby, but you had the baby you had with their unique personality and their unique spirit and their unique soul. We have almost like a fiduciary duty, right? So we think about maybe like a financial planner or an attorney, and they're like, attorney-client privilege. Like there's like a moral, law-bound duty they have to protect their client. Well, I feel like, as a parent, it's the same way with your kids. Like that's your unique see that you have like a moral and legal obligation to steward them in the world, and that can't be looked over because you want to run a business and you want to do whatever. That's my vision. Notice again, these are visions, not goals. So my vision for my goal is fulfilling God's purpose for my life, having a great marriage, raising well-adjusted kids, and now we get to be wealthy, successful businesswoman with multiple businesses. That's definitely how I see myself, and I see the direction that my life is ultimately going in. And also I see myself aging well and being healthy. So that's the fifth component of the vision that I have for my life. So these aren't goals as much as it's just how I see my life. I see myself doing what God called me to do. I see myself yucking it up, with my husband, having a great time, in old age. Like I see us being together forever. I see having kids who are well-educated and well-adjusted and just fun to be around and doing great things for the world. I see myself running businesses. I see myself with financial abundance. I see myself aging well, even in my 60s. I see myself, she still got it. She's still in shape. I love older women who are on it, not necessarily that they're super skinny or that they don't have wrinkles or anything like that, but I just love older women who you can tell have had a life well lived, and they just took care of themselves, and there's just a inner beauty about them. I love it. I want to have that myself, and I want to be healthy. You can't do any of this without being healthy. So, I don't see myself on medication. I don't see myself walking around with a cane. Like, again, these visions for your life. This is how I see myself. So for your vision, think about how you see your life, and it should map back to your ultimate value. All of these things are really important for me because I have a value of leaving a legacy and leaving a mark on the world. That's not to say that if you have a different value that you won't have a similar vision. You can have a similar vision, but it ultimately mapped to a different value. But your values comes first because it informs how you see your life. All right. So after the vision category, then you have your goals. And so specifically, these are goals just for this year. So when you're coming up with goals, you want to ask yourself, okay, based on the vision that I have for my life, what things do I need to achieve in order for those things to be accomplished? So right now, honestly, I feel like I am fulfilling God's purpose for my life. Like that, if I would have had goals in that category, it would have been more like last year and the year before, which is well documented on this podcast, and I don't need to rehash that. But I've gotten out of being in open rebellion with God. I've gotten out of, running from God. Like we've passed that. We've conquered that, and now I have a good rhythm and understanding and a good relationship, with God now. So that's why I don't have any goals like, oh, I need to do this or I need to do that. I'm like my status quo in my spiritual life is good right now. That might change, but for right now, I'm happy about the direction that I'm going in my spiritual life. So I don't have any goals for 2020 that I feel like I need to achieve in order to bring this vision to pass, because what I'm already doing is bringing that particular part of the vision to pass. So that's what you want to do. You want to look at your vision and say, okay, what do I need to fix, tweak, achieve? Like, where am I off track where my vision is not coming to pass? So for me, I feel not off track, but there's things I need to do in my business. There's things I need to do in the age well, be healthy category. There's things I need to do just in marriage and motherhood. Just things I need to do for myself. So my 4 goals for this year: 1, to stabilize my business; 2, to transition my family to a plant-based and ancestral diet; 3, to master my role as a wife and mom; and 4, to create a capsule wardrobe that perfectly fits me. So by stabilize my business, as you guys know, I've made lots and lots of changes. I changed my brand name in 2018, and then in 2019 I really kind of like gutted a lot of my offerings and processes. For Black Friday, I sold all of my products, and there's only a handful on my website now, so a lot of the things I was selling before I'm not even selling anymore. So I'm really focused on rebuilding and creating new things and new programs going forward. And so there was a lot of creative chaos, in 2019, which is great. And so now I want to start streamlining that. Maybe streamline would be a better word. So streamline / stabilize that in my business. So I really want to grow my More Than One Club. I'm focusing on brand deals right now. There's actually a second business that I'm building with a friend related to corporate contracts and things, speaking engagements. So, all of that, the seeds for that were kind of planted last year, but it's all kind of up in the air. And so this year, I feel like I really want to just, stabilize it, streamline it, so that when I'm going into 2021, everything is on a solid foundation and I can kind of start making new moves. So I even told myself this year is not really a year of achievement for me. I'm not really focused on achieving new things in my business or going after new things. I'm really focused on building a super strong foundation that will hold me for this next decade. God willing, I have plenty of time this decade to achieve a lot of things, which I know is very strange to hear. Most goal setting business people are like, you don't have any time, you got to do things right now. But I think that's how we get caught up. We have to recognize the season that we're in. Last year was the season of plowing. This year is the season of planting. And I know my harvest will come in future seasons if I just focus on planting. So that's where I am in my business. For the diet, that's important because, and I talked about this on Instagram. Y'all follow me on Instagram, Courtney L. Sanders. A lot of this is explained in those posts. But I explained on Instagram how I realized that I was having difficulty keeping up with my responsibilities, both as a businesswoman and in the home as just a wife and a mom. Little things like going to bed with dishes in the sink, or not doing things on time in my business because I was tired and I had headaches and I felt bloated after eating. And so it wasn't until I did a fast, and I actually did a fast for spiritual reasons, not for dietary reasons. But in the midst of that fast, I realized that my food is part of the problem. Part of the problem why you're so tired in the evening and drowsy, girl, is because of what you eaten, you know? So I've really overhauled my diet, and I want to overhaul it not just for me, but for my family as well. My husband, he's 10 years older than me, actually. So I'm like, and I hope he doesn't hear this because he says I get on him about this all the time. Not that he's old, but I'm in my 30s. He's in his 40s. So he's early 40s, I'm early 30s. So I'm really on him about, making sure that he's eating a good diet and all of that, because he ain't leaving me with these kids. I need him around. And for my son, he's a toddler growing, we think about brain development, whatever. So I want to make sure he's getting his vitamin D and his DHA and all of that. And I noticed when we went to the pediatrician, she was like, oh, well, you need to be supplementing with this and that. He's not getting enough this and that. And I don't mind supplementing, but to me, that was a focus on like, ooh, his diet, our diet, because he eats what I eat, is not nutritious enough. And so I want to transition to a plant-based diet. That doesn't mean vegan or vegetarian. I have no desire to go vegan or vegetarian. I have nothing against people who do. I've dabbled in it a few years ago. I think it's great. For me, I desire to include healthy, lean meats in my diet, but for me, the focus more so is on ancestral diet, which I spoke about in depth on Instagram, so I won't go off on that. But I just did a lot of research and realized that there's a lot of wisdom in eating the foods of your ethnic origin, and that a lot of our minor genetic differences between the ethnicities, the food that those ethnic groups ate for millennia supports that, right? So, we think of Asians, well, their diet of that includes, different soy and rice and different things is uniquely suited to their composition. Well, Africans, and I am of West African descent, have diets high in leafy greens, collard greens, tubers, yams, things like that, rice, millet, different grains. And those particular grains and leafy greens and vegetables have specific vitamins in them that actually works well with their constitution. And so just because we're now in America doesn't mean our body changed, right? So I feel like, particularly as an African American, a lot of the health challenges that we face is because we are very divorced from our diet of origin. And so I want to go back to that. And also for cultural reasons, I want my son to understand these are what West African foods are. I'm of Caribbean descent. My grandfather was Bahamian. I don't know Nan Caribbean dish or Bahamian dish. I want him to know what these things are. So, so for both health and cultural reasons, I want to make sure that we're eating a plant-based ancestral diet. When I say master when I say master my role as a wife and mom, master just means to have a high level of proficiency in. And so I've always known that being a mom was a job, right? Like you're wiping butts and putting on diapers and running around with kids. But it's only now that we're going to be celebrating our 6th anniversary. Man, it's taking a long time. But now that we're celebrating our 6th anniversary, I'm realizing that being a wife is a job too. And this is a little rabbit trail. I won't stay here long, but just a side note, because I want to do a podcast on this just whole separately. I think there's a lot of people got it twisted, basically. I'm on Instagram and I see all the posts about, Lord, send me somebody's son, and Sierra, what prayer did you pray to get Russell? And I know there's a lot of women, who desire to be married and I need a good man and all that stuff. I don't think women realize, though, what they're asking for. Like, marriage is not just an extended slumber party with your boyfriend. Like, it's not just, oh, we're just going to be best friends for life. Like, there are roles and responsibilities that you agree to undertake once you come into a marriage. And I think women don't realize this because men don't talk about it. Men just do it. Like, just men in general, they're not talkers. Like, when they're on social media, they're looking at like LeBron James stuff and like sports. They're not on social media for the most part going off about random things the way women do, because, we like to chat and express our emotions and all that stuff. And so I think because we're not hearing from men, we don't realize that there are sacrifices that they take and there are roles that they take very seriously when they come into a marriage. But because we don't hear them say that and we don't see it, we don't recognize that there are roles and responsibilities that we need to take on as well. And so, and it, you know, it looks different in every marriage. So I'm not trying to say like, oh, he needs to do this and you need to do that. But I am saying that regardless of how y'all figure it out, when you come together, there are duties that you need to be committed to, just as there are duties that he needs to be committed to. It's not just like, oh, it's just a slumber party and we just gonna have a good time. And for a long time, that's what I felt like. I treated my marriage like, oh, we two grown folks, we two independent people. You do your thing, I do my thing. We just kind of do it in the same proximity as each other, which kind of goes back to what I was saying, where for a long time I put my business, you know, ahead of my marriage, because I was like, oh, my husband good, he grown, he older than me, he 10 years older than me, he good, you know. But now that I'm a mom too, I'm like, oh no, like there are things that I need to do to care for him just as I care for my son. And so this year, I felt like I realized all of that in 2018 and 2019. And so this year I want to start mastering that from a practical standpoint. Like, I think I realized it in 2018. In 2019, I accepted it and like owned it and stopped being resentful about it. And now in 2020, I want to do it. I want to do it with excellence. Like, I genuinely want to serve my family well. I want to learn what that looks like. And so practically, I'm like, I want to meal plan better. I want to have better routines for, you know, so we can do family activities on the weekends. Like, you know, I want to plan this for my son and plan this for my husband. Like, I want to get his wardrobe together, which is a project that I'll talk about as we go down. Like, you know, there are things that I want to do for him and my son, and I want to do them well. And so that's a goal that I have this year. And then lastly, create a capsule wardrobe that is perfectly me. One, this is just a personal goal. This is a goal I've had for like a decade, since like high school. Well, 2 decades, goodness, since high school. So this might be a goal that I'll never achieve, or this might be a goal that I'll have for life. But for practical purposes, it's important for my business and for this whole wife and mom thing. So for my business, I mean, I am a social media influencer. I do speaking events. I am out and about. People recognize me, which is super random. I've been recognized a few times. So I want to make sure that, you know, I look my best and I look presentable. But as a busy mom, I want to make sure, and this is why I'm interested in a capsule wardrobe, I don't want to be fussy with my clothes. Like, I want them to feel like me and look good and be stylish and all that, but I don't want a lot of clothes. That's a lot to clean, a lot to dry clean, a lot to wash. Like, I want a small wardrobe that is fire, that looks really good on me, and that is easy for me to just get up in the morning and just like put things together and be like, bam, out the door, I'm looking good. And then, you know, again, as a wife and mom, one of those roles, and, you know, this might be controversial, you know, you have an obligation not to let yourself go. So men are very visual. I want to make sure that I'm looking my best. Part of looking your best outside of, you know, working out and eating healthy or whatever is like dressing, you know, in an attractive way. So yeah, my goal is to create a capsule wardrobe that is perfectly me. This is not to say that my clothes aren't good, but it's just, you know, I feel like I'm like 75 to 80% of the way there, but sometimes I get dressed and I'm like, there's a little more. I'm still figuring it out. So we'll see how that goes in 2020. All right. So now that we've gone over my goals, then we get into projects. So your goals determine your projects that you undertake. This is, I think the gap between goals and projects is where people get messed up and why they don't achieve their goals. They set goals like I have, but they don't recognize that they then need to determine what are the projects that's going to lead them to achieve the goal. So for me, for instance, I have a goal of stabilizing my business, as I explained. One of the projects that I'm undertaking is mastering my revenue generation process and tasks. So like I said, my primary income sources right now are the More Than One Club and brand deals, and you know, some speed engagements and one-off digital product sales, but the bulk of my revenue comes from those 2 places. Right now, the process for growing the More Than One Club and the process for going after brand deals, I'm just going to admit, is a bit haphazard. Like, it's not consistent. It's not like I know every week I'm going to do this, I'm going to have my VA do that. It's a little all over the place. I'm making it work right now because I just, you know, do what I got to do when I do it. But I would like for this to be more streamlined. So that's a project that I'm working on. It's not a goal. It's a project in the sense that there are specific tasks that I need to set up in order to get that done. Same thing with, here on the video. Another project is I need to domesticate my LLC. My LLC is still not in the state of Texas, which is a problem. But part of it, I'm like, well, do I want to change my LLC? And my accountant is like, no, keep it because you have history with the IRS. You just need to domesticate it. So anyway, you tax nerds and accountant nerds know that whole process. So I need to do that. I need to decorate my office. I want to start doing more YouTube videos and shooting in here. And it's kind of echoey in here even when I record podcasts. So I need a rug and more furniture. So this is what I'm saying. I look at, okay, what are my needs? And then I say, what are the projects that I need to undertake? For transitioning my family to a plant-based ancestral diet, one project is mastering my meal planning process. Another project is starting a garden, When we bought this house, we were blessed that there's a whole garden in the backyard, like already built, like the beds and everything are already set up. I just need to plow that stuff out and like lay new soil down and plant some seeds. So I need to do that. I've talked at length about decorating my house. That kind of goes with mastering my role as a wife and mom. Our last house in Dallas was not homey and it was not decorated because I was like super focused on my business. And I was like, ain't nobody got time for this. Don't ask me to decorate this. I was like, I get the basic furniture and I'm like off to, doing my thing. And so again, now accepting and owning that role. My husband is not good at decorating the house, but like most men, he desires a comfy, homey place, a respite from, fighting battles and slaying dragons at work that he can come home to. So I accept it as my responsibility to make sure that the house is in order, not just from a cleanliness standpoint, but that it feels like, it should have a woman's touch. Like that's my role. And so that's a project that I'm undertaking because it has a clear start and finish point with clear delineated tasks. That's the main difference between a goal and a project. A goal has like tasks, associated to, and you do know when you've achieved it, but it's less concrete. A project is very like, this is going to take 2 months. There are 30 different tasks that we need to undertake, and you can like set a schedule to it. So you need to ask yourself, what are the projects associated with your goals? Some of the random projects, I know this is long, so I'll try to move through this a little quicker. I've talked about this, open an online boutique to sell some of my old clothes. I am a thrifter, okay? I love thrifting. I love vintage shopping. I have a unique eye and a unique knack for getting discounted, like really nice designer clothes. And, I buy stuff, I get it home, I wear it. It doesn't feel like me, but it's still really cute. So I'm like, you know what? I need to start selling this stuff because I'm good at it. And people are always like, where do you find these things? And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to open up an online boutique. So that's a project. I need to get that done. I want to learn how to sew. That's a project. I want to create my husband's capsule wardrobe because he gets frustrated in the morning, doesn't know what to wear. That's a project. So those are some projects. So after your projects, the last thing are your habits and your routines. Now, before we actually get into habits and routines, your projects have their own task. And if you haven't taken my Just Do It project management course, I highly recommend that you do it because I explain how to tackle a project. But here on the video, I'm just going to show you really quickly what a project might look like. So here in this app that I've been raving about and it's helping me manage my whole life, I have a project of starting a garden. So I've set up a project board, and let me set this up. Okay. So, there's not a lot on here, but this is what I mean. Like, you'll come up with the tasks that are associated for that project, and then you will track, like, what's up next, what are you doing, what's done, what are you waiting on. Maybe, is there another one that's a little, okay, here's a project I have of launching a Poshmark store. Okay, so here's, like, all the tasks I have associated with that. And, you can kind of track using this tool where you are and what's getting accomplished. So I don't want to make this confusing, but in the categories, you have your value, your vision, your goals, your projects. I'm going to move into habits and routine, but understand that inside of projects, once you determine what projects you need to tackle in order to achieve your goal, understand that each of those projects are going to have their own tasks associated with them. And that's different from everything else on this board. Anyway, take my Just Do It project management course. Okay. After you come up with your projects, then you want to come up with habits. And these are just things that you need to do on a regular basis just to make everything work. So whether that's to achieve your projects or to achieve your goals. There's some things that don't really fall into goals or projects. It's just tasks you need to do in order to achieve your ultimate vision. So I have an example of some habits and routines that I'm working on. Outlining my podcast content every Wednesday morning. That's a habit that I'm taking up in 2020. I'm setting Thursday as my content creation day. So I'm going to batch record at least 2 podcasts every Thursday morning. And then I'm going to shoot any like photos for Instagram or videos for YouTube Thursday afternoon. I'm going to, schedule podcast interviews for Saturday morning, write my social media captions on Friday. So, what are you doing on a daily basis or on a weekly basis? What do you need to do? And these are just habits mostly for my business stuff, but there might be habits once I get into gardening that I'm like, oh, I need to water the plants every day or every other day. That might become a habit. Or decorating the house. Maybe I create a habit of looking through Pinterest for 15 minutes every night before bed, So you need to come up with habits that will help you achieve your goals. And for me, in this little tool, I actually have a habit tracker where I can track every day, where I can track every day what needs to be done. So I want to make sure I'm drinking a liter of water. With my son, I want to make sure we're practicing his words, his colors, his alphabet sound. I want to make sure I'm checking my bank account daily, that I'm praying and reading the Bible daily, that I'm posting at least 3 stories on Instagram. So some of those things that aren't really goals, it's just habits that you need to do. You want to at least write those down and have a place where you can track them. And that's why I really like this tool. And again, go to CourtneyLSanders.com/2020 to see the video and to see what this tool is and how it works. I actually did a whole masterclass on this, and I have templates for sale where you can set up your system like this. So yeah, this is not that masterclass. I know you might be looking on the left-hand side like, what is all of this? How did you set all this up? It's really cool though. I have little places for me where I can track, habits related to my personal goals and to-dos related to myself and just different notes that, I'm writing to myself. So it's pretty awesome. But this podcast / video is long enough. So if you want to know more about the tool, come check out this video, CourtneyLSanders.com/2020. But do know that I have a masterclass that goes over this that you can purchase, and I have templates if you want to just copy and paste this into your own system so that you can manage your goals this way in 2020. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. I hope you now understand the difference between your values, your vision, your goals, your projects, and your habits. So now that you know, let's take this next week and kind of organize what your goals are. And if you want, I would love it if you would share it with me. So maybe share on Instagram, or if you want to send me an email with your stuff. If you're in the more than one club, you can just, post in there and I'll see it. And yeah, so this is your ultimate guide to achieving it all in 2020. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.